All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll give everybody just a couple minutes to trickle in. See some familiar names on the attendee list. Thanks for joining us again. We've got some repeat fans here. I guess I'm assuming you're a fan because you keep coming, but that's a bold assumption. Thanks for the courtesy
After
laugh.
the webinar.
We were on mute. All right. So I think we are good to kick off. We'll just start with our introductions and what we're going to do today. So today we are talking about a really exciting feature. You might have seen this in the product over the last couple of weeks, but we're going to give you a bit more details on it today. We're talking about cookie initiators and origin stories. I'm Abby Pankos. I am the product marketing manager here at ObservePoint. And I'm joined by Dylan Sellers, our VP of Customer Success, and Mike Maziarz, our Senior Product Manager. We'll kick off the meeting with just a quick recap of what we talked about last time, and then we'll hand the meeting over to Mike and Dylan, who will give you some exciting information on how cookie initiators and origin stories are a real game changer for everyone. So we're excited you're here. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, so just a reminder of what we talked about last time. And if you want to review this webinar, these are all posted on our website on the resources section. We talked about building alerts and rules, making sure that they are created for specific audiences and only if they are for a critical piece of your website, to make sure that those audiences are not bombarded with emails or alerts. Dylan showed us how to use custom messages to provide more context and how to use tags to track the status of your alerts. If you'd like to learn more about that, again, you can rewatch the webinar or always feel free to reach out to us. I'll share our email addresses in the chat today. All right, and I will kick it over to Dylan now to talk about cookie initiators. Take it away, Dylan.
Awesome. Thanks, Abby. Welcome, everyone. Just wanted to kick things off by reminding everyone that we do have Q&A at the very end. So make sure to throw in questions there. I'm sure there'll be some questions from this discussion. It's a very exciting topic. And Abby mentioned it's been a couple weeks. It's actually been a couple months since we released our first iteration of cookie initiators. And Mike will speak a little bit to the story there and why we're kind of announcing it now and doing a webinar today. But we're super excited to give you just a quick overview of how it works. We'll highlight some examples here. And then we'll dive into some of the strategy and then the tips and tricks. So while we're here on the overview, I'm going to take you into the platform. And we're going to, I'm going to highlight that I've set up 5 audits here. And while we're here, I want to pause and just call out the fact that privacy audits specifically are going to be designed for various use cases. And when we talk about we're going to get into this to the strategy side, but you should be thinking about the different regions and consent states that you should be testing. Here's just a sprinkle of examples. One with global privacy control enabled in the US. We have a Europe opted out one for GDPR. We also have a Europe opted out one that explicitly declines versus implicitly declines. And then, which we could go into depth on. And then I have an example here of a US cookie opt out. And here's a journey. Notice I've sprinkled in some journeys here actually, which we often pair with audits. We'll talk about that. So let's actually dive into, because we're talking about cookie initiators and origin stories today, let's go into an example. We'll do an example of an audit and a journey today. In fact, let's start with the journey one, because it will kind of help set the foundation or set the stage for the audit. So we've actually had this journey execute the actions to opt out of cookies and reject all cookies. And we're using Marriott.com in this example. Marriott is not a customer of ours today. And we keep our customers, generally don't make examples of them on these webinars. But we do want to make sure that we're showing you real life websites and how they can better improve their compliance. So what we're going to do here is, in this journey, we'll show you this new cookies ribbon here at the top. And you'll notice that in this table, We have some basic high-level summary information, the number of unique cookies, third-party cookies, unique domains. And you can see this table we have name, domain, first and third party, total initiators, and most recent state. And those two, total initiators and most recent state columns, are really important. And what we're saying here, when we say total initiators, we're saying that twice in this particular action, the underscore ABCK cookie has been either set or modified, or it has been deleted, and some change or interaction has been happened with this. Now, when I say interaction, I guess you need to be careful because that's a little too broad. This isn't necessarily saying that, that this cookie was referenced, just that this cookie was, again, created, modified, or deleted. Oftentimes multiple network requests may be referencing this, and that's not an initiator, but whenever we're making changes that impact the cookie itself, we call that an initiator. So we're basically writing to that cookie. And then the most recent state, this is really important to help you understand. We'll just quickly summarize the action that took place. And because a cookie could be, again, added, modified, or deleted, and we'll display that here for your convenience. Now, the magic happens when you go and expand and look into one of these cookies. So I'm going to pull up this first party cookie at Marriott.com, and you'll see the name, the value, some other metadata associated with that cookie. And then we get into the story. And these stories are designed to be read like a story, read in chronological order from top to bottom. So what we learned about this cookie, what do we know? On step one, when we first loaded the homepage on Marriott, and by the way, we're using a California proxy in this example, the total initiators across all actions were 3 for this particular cookie. So this has been, what we're saying here is that this cookie is going to be referenced again later, and something is going to happen to it later. Then the total actions across this web journey are 4. There are 4 actions that are interacting with it. The action number 1 is the cookie was added on the on-page action. And we have a label here describing what this action does. It navigates to the homepage. So when I set up this journey, I added that label, and you can see that in context here. You can see total initiators in this action. So there are actually 2 HTTP network requests that were server-side network requests, and they set this cookie. And so you can actually, we'll show this a little bit later, but you can actually click into these network requests and explore more information about them. And then it says here, this action created this cookie with these attributes. So you can see it defined these attributes that we had at the very beginning. And over time, later on in this journey, you'll actually see that these attributes may change and be modified. And we'll actually highlight where those modifications took place right here. Notice that there's also at the bottom a quick link to the other actions that were involved, and it has a quick summary of what interaction looked like. So for example, in action 2, the cookie changed by on-page action, and then action 3, the cookie was deleted because we executed a clear all cookies function or action. And then action 4 here is the cookie was added back on page with the when we clicked reject all, or after clicking reject all, I should say. So this particular, that kind of tells the story of this journey, actually, because it has a nice little summary, and these labels are pretty clear. But this is also telling the individual story of this cookie, where it starts, where it comes from, what happens to it, and what the final state is. So we can do this again for any cookie in this list, first or third party. And you can tell, like, for example, this GCL_AU one, this has 10 initiators. It can be quite messy sometimes. And here we're seeing that Google is actually setting a number of this cookie 10 times. It is setting this on the client side in this instance, and it's setting the initiator 10 times. So this is clearly a highly significant cookie for Google and for other technologies that reference it. And you can go on through the list. I won't go deeper here. On the left-hand side, I just want to call out the screenshots real quick. I maybe should have done this at the beginning, but you can see here the tracking preferences is what we're clicking. We clear all the cookies before we hit reject all. And then we click that reject all button, and we land back on the Marriott homepage after we've opted out. So that's what these actions are doing. Now let's get to, if we look at this list real quick, you can see that's on step 2. Some of these were changed. Some of them were not changed. Some were actually deleted on step 2. Just since loading the homepage, the majority of these were not changed. On step 3, you can see in the most recent state column that these were actually all deleted. We wiped everything. And I thought this was super curious. There was actually one cookie that was not deleted, and actually it was deleted, but then it came back immediately. It's like constantly being pinged onto the page. And it's this PIM session ID. I actually went and tested this in the browser, and sure enough, it's extremely persistent. You delete it and it immediately comes back. And then on action 4, you can see that after clearing the cookies and rejecting all, we do see a significant reduction in the number of cookies, which is fantastic. And you can see the cookies that were added back on the homepage. All right. So it tells an incredible story. And if I go here, let's go back to that, revisit the ABCK cookie. It's going to show me changes. So in this case, you can see highlighted in bold here, these are unique identifiers and other basically alphanumeric characters that have been modified since the previous step. And you can see that the expiration date has actually been kicked down the road. It's been increased by 50 seconds. You can see the cookie duration, which is the lifetime. Actually, so there's expiry and duration. That's also been increased. So that's basically the lifespan or window of that cookie. So, and you can also go back to action 3, 2, or 1 and revisit those. So again, you can see the whole story about this cookie. All right, let's go into the audit real fast and talk about that briefly. So I ran an audit using the California proxy we have, and we use those actions to opt out of cookies. And if we go into the cookie inventory report, I actually thought it was pretty, I'm not surprised. I often see other third-party cookies. In fact, if I filter out, remove this filter here, you can see we had 63 third-party cookies. And one of the reasons why is that this audit crawled to a Brazilian page, and oftentimes the tech stacks do not align, and that consent cookie does not get properly handed off. But for other countries, but that's okay. Even within the US, we did see this Bing cookie repeatedly or reset in the browser. So let's go to MUID. This is a Microsoft cookie set by Bing.com, and it's used for personalized and targeted advertising. And you can see that it's actually set on the homepage on Marriott.com and 11 other pages, all of which are, except for I think there's one Brazil page, the rest are all US pages. I can then filter here by MUID and see the full story. So in the story, the cookie was added in the pre-audit actions, navigating to the homepage, which is basically the same exact actions as the journey. It was deleted on the third pre-audit action, which is where we cleared all cookies. And then it was added back on page load when we went and visited the homepage. So this cookie persisted after we rejected cookies and cleared all the cookies. It still resurfaced. Something super powerful that we'll get into is that you can actually, we'll show not only HTTP network requests, but we'll also show JavaScript files that are responsible for setting cookies. And this, we don't have an example of that. We haven't shown one yet, but we're going to show you one here soon. So I'm going to actually pause here and switch into talking about the strategy, but that's the overview of cookie initiators and origin stories. I want you to see how it feels in journeys and how it feels inside of audits and how you can use it to quickly identify which network requests or JavaScript files are responsible for setting the cookie. We'll come back to this here in a minute, but for now, I'm actually going to go over back to our slides. So we didn't have time to go and validate that Bing cookie is there in the browser. We've done that. We actually had a previous webinar where we talked about how to validate in your browser how a cookie is set and that it's persisting after you opt out. So you'll want to go back and watch that webinar. It was one of our very first webinars. And maybe if Abby or Ryan can drop that link in the chat, that would be excellent for people to go back and visit. I want to talk briefly about strategy and get into how do we make sure that this tool is being leveraged and that we're maximizing the value of the solution. So for starters, step one, a very core part of your strategy should be to integrate and integrate and include your consent management platform admins. So it could be person could be responsible for OneTrust, TrustArc, Evidon. There are a number of solutions out there on the market. Protiviti, there's a lot out there that you could go and look at that can, a lot of these technologies that are available for you to manage your cookies and manage consent. But whichever vendor you end up using, we want you to make sure that those admins know about this technology, because it is going to save them so much time, and it's going to allow them to really do their job well. And so we really recommend you do a demo with them, maybe even share this webinar afterwards, because you'll get access to the recording. Make sure they see this. Send them. I have some people that have expressed concerns, and I would say one of the very best things you could do is send them a very simple short training video. It doesn't have to be longer than 5 minutes, showing them how to click on an audit, how to go into the cookie inventory report, and how to analyze those origin stories. I also recommend subscribing those team members, those OneTrust admins, or other CMP admins, TrustArc, Evanon, and subscribe them to alerts, and make sure that they are involved in actually responding to these issues. Because if you become the one-stop shop for everything ObservePoint, there will be going to be bottlenecks, and you're going to have a hard time getting to resolution of these cookies, these unauthorized cookies. So make sure you don't do this alone, that you involve other teams, and make sure they're subscribed to those privacy alerts. And make sure that, because they ultimately are the ones that are going to make decisions with guidance from the legal team, but they're going to make decisions on what is the source of truth, what should be approved and what's unapproved. And they'll be able to make decisions much more quickly and have the resources to do so. And they can compare against their system, their consent management platform system, and they can see what they have approved in their system and compare it to ObservePoint. So for a lot of reasons, you're going to want to get your CMP admins on board, get them into ObservePoint. I recommend starting them with read-only access, so that if they're not very familiar with ObservePoint, they can't break anything, they can't run audits without your permission, and but they can consume all the reports. And I also recommend, when you give them read-only access, dedicate a folder to your privacy audits and give them access to just that folder, making it that much easier for them to go and find the thing that's valuable to them. And maybe the third tip there is to make sure it's well labeled, so these audits are very clear for them to understand how this was configured, which proxy it was using, maybe which consent state it's in. Keep those things in mind and get feedback from them. If they're having a hard time, we'd love to hear the feedback that they share. But absolutely, you need to get those team members on board. Okay, bullet number 2 I want to share is build privacy audits for various consent scenarios. And I did go through this actually in this view here, where we have global privacy control enabled for the US. We have reject all for the US, and we have an explicit reject all for Europe, and we have an implicit. The reason why we have both is because the legislation and GDPR is pretty clear. If you read a lot of legal briefings, their interpretation of many attorneys is that you need to earn consent. The consent is not given until it's earned. And so to have those third-party cookies and those tags already firing when that visitor from Europe comes to your webpage is a bad thing, and puts you at risk. Whereas a lot of companies also want to know, okay, after they explicitly decline, after they hit that reject all button, do I do a better job? So test those different scenarios. It's super critical you understand where your exposure is, and protect yourselves and your company. Okay, third bullet point here on strategy is, and I'd love to go sit down with you, or customer success team members would love to sit down with you and make sure we built all those out. In fact, many of them have built them out within your accounts. They may not have been run yet, or maybe they're not running a regular cadence, and that's up to you to go in and leverage those. But talk to your customer success rep about that. They'd love to help. The third bullet here is most common causes for rogue and piggybacking tags. You need to understand, and you're going to find this as you dig into the origin stories and the cookie initiators, and is that hard-coded tags, embedded third-party content, and inconsistent tech stacks are going to be a root cause for a lot of these unauthorized cookies. These are basically the points of failure for a consent management platform. And those points of failure cause exposure. So we have some solutions. One is we recommend you set up a hard-coded tag audit. And what that means is we effectively have an audit that we spin up, and we're blocking the tag management system, meaning that only hard-coded technologies are allowed on the site and during that audit. And so what that means is there won't be you'll find out, you'll basically at the end have an inventory of all the technologies that are embedded straight into the HTML versus deployed through Tag Manager System. And your consent management platform won't be able to control those technologies that are not deployed through your Tag Manager System, depending on how you implement it, but the majority of people are implementing it through integration with their Tag Manager System. So if you block the Tag Manager System from firing more tags, you get this beautiful list of hard-coded technologies, and you can use that to clean up a lot of legacy code on your site and become more compliant. Second bullet is to use privacy audits to align privacy and analytics tech stacks. So you might find, you'll discover as you do this, that in the example I showed you earlier with Marriott, that there wasn't a good handoff of consent to other countries or regions. So let's say your visitor comes in through Marriott and they end up going over to the Brazil website because they speak Portuguese and they may be a US resident, but then they prefer the Portuguese. So making sure those tech stacks are aligned. Another super common misalignment of tech stacks is you'll have different subdomains within Marriott.com or whatever website you have, like your help site, your blog, your careers page, your investors pages. And those subdomains generally will not have the same exact technology stack as www.observepoint.com or Marriott.com, your primary subdomain. So as you audit, you're going to find those points of exposure as well. And you're going to discover that you need to get all of those subdomains on the same standard, all acknowledging their users' consent and all aligned. The third piece, third solution I have is to coordinate with the content teams and educate them about the consequences of embedding third-party content. If they understand well that their third-party content, their YouTube videos or Vimeo videos or iframed content is setting or dropping these cookies and putting the company exposure, then they want to know, they should know about it, and you should be educating them about it. So 3 solutions to 3 of those core problems: hard-coded tags, embedded third-party content, and then inconsistent tech stacks. Okay, last I want to get into tips and tricks, and we'll be fast. But I wanted to call out 3 tips and tricks today for cookie initiators and origin stories. So the very first one is that for JavaScript files, you actually can, when we have a JavaScript file that's responsible for setting a cookie, the example I'll give today, actually I'm going to go back to the journey here, and I'm going to go to the first action and look for the Facebook pixel cookie. So this one is set by a JavaScript file. And I'm actually going to go ahead and copy this. And then I'm going to go into a browser here, and I'm going to paste in this URL in the browser. And you'll see that it pulls up the file. And within here, I can do Command F or Control F, and I can search for this cookie name. And in this instance, it's pretty nice and clean because there's only one instance of _FUP, and here it is. Here you can see it's really small. Let me zoom in a ton, make it easier for you. I need to find it again. Here we go. Highlight on the page there, it says I equals _FUP. And it can be really tough to dissect these files because a lot of them are minified, and they use a letter for a variable name. In this case, at this point in time, this Facebook cookie is being defined and set in the browser. Okay, so there's an example of how you can get to the exact line of code where that cookie is being set. And there might be multiple references to the cookie name. And so what we recommend is you actually look at the exact, sorry, let me go back to here. Is you actually look at the line of code that is, oh, sorry, this was actually embedded client side. And I need to find an example of JavaScript. If we don't have time, I might just call out that if you look at any file, any cookie set via JavaScript, you should see it set. You should see the exact line of code dictated there. So that was, I looked at a client side example. I apologize for that. Let me see if I can find one more. Okay, that's also client side. I won't have an example to go through today, but we actually show you the line and the and column of that exact of the function that is setting that cookie. So you can use that and explore that if you have cookies set by JavaScript. All right, number 2 is you should use the details you should explore the request log. So when I go into the cookie inventory report, for example, and let's take this, let's take that MUID cookie again as an example. Oh, sorry, I need to just find the home page because that's where we found that cookie. And we're going to go to MUID. So in here, you can actually click on the network request. So in this case, we have this network request down here where the cookie was added. And I click on it, it'll take me to the request log. It looks like it doesn't like all my I think I may have run into a bug there. I think it doesn't like that request. I think, Mike, I think that's the one where it's added in pre-audit, or it's, yeah, we have some filter issue, I think there. We'll resolve that, but you should be able to click on those network requests and go to the actual request log and see details around that network request. So that's another example, is you want to go in there, and in fact, I'll go into a request log example, that one that I would have expected to work. Here's the LinkedIn one. And actually from LinkedIn, once I look at the request, we can look backwards at the cookies. So we can say this network request is responsible for setting or initiating these 4 cookies. So that's tip number 2, is making sure you look at the network request view, because it's going to show you kind of a reverse view of the mapping relationships between the network requests and the cookies, which can be super powerful. Okay. And then tip number 3 is that cookie initiators in the audit cookie inventory and request logs exports. So you should know that in both the request log export and the cookie inventory export, we have all this cookie initiator data available in aggregate. So many of you are wondering, like, yeah, like I want to make it's nice to know I can drill into individual pages and cookies, but you're going to want to see this view. And we don't have time to go into too much detail, but let's see if I can expand this a little bit. We have here these columns, click tracking preferences. We have, these are the specific actions. So step 1 was snap to the home page, and we can see that the cookies that were added. We can see when we click tracking preferences, what were those changes. We can see when we cleared all cookies, everything is deleted. And then we can see what happened when we rejected all. And you can see the initiators on the right-hand side here. So if you want this data in aggregate and you want to share it, this is a fantastic tip. All right. We're going to go ahead and pass it to Mike Maziar, who's just going to give you some updates, talk about what's next with cookies.
Thanks, Dylan. So lots of new information here that ObserverPoint is providing, which is awesome. Something that's not really being done anywhere. And with that, the reason kind of Dylan alluded to a little bit delay in the release here is we've actually been undergoing the process. All this what you see today is actually patent pending. So we've been in that legal process for a little while, making sure our ducks in a row and that this isn't being done anywhere else, and things are looking good there. So that's kind of why they had to play in the release. But with that said, this does give you amazing insight into how to find what cookies are there and how to get them rectified and removed down to the single line of code, which makes it a lot easier to get those things removed and get your site cleaned up. So more to come still. So with that said, this is just the beginning. We consider ourselves the world's best cookie scanner and want to continue on that path. And so kind of some things that's going to give you a little tease of what's coming up next is expanding this initiator view. So this right now, you can get some aggregate information at the export level, but we are planning to improve that later this year. No timeline yet, but just being able to see these cookies at expanded level across your audit and see what tags or cookies the relationship is happening in just kind of an easier holistic view. Also giving a better tree map view. So on the page details, you've always had the initiator view for tags, but we want to include the cookies and request logs into that view at the page level as well. So you have that visual as well, not just kind of a text. And then something we're also really excited about to kind of enhance the understanding what these cookies are is adding descriptions to the cookies and having a cookie database of defining, okay, well, what is this cookie actually doing on your website? Who's responsible for what technology and information about that company or vendor. So those are kind of the 3 big things that we're looking at as far as adding is more to our platform to give you better insight into cookies. So just kind of repeating those kind of audit-wide initiators view, more holistic view at a page level, seeing visually how those cookies, tags, and requests all interact, and then a greater in-product, inline educational piece or informational piece around what those cookies are and the vendors responsible for. So those are kind of the next big things. If you have any questions or want to give any feedback on any prototypes or meet with us or have suggestions for us, the product is always happy to meet with you. So feel free to email us directly or ask your CSM and we'll jump on those calls with you. So hope that helps and appreciate you joining today. So I'll pass it back over to Dylan.
That's awesome, Mike. I've never been more excited about what our product and engineering teams are churning out in Observe Point. And I think you guys have probably seen this. We often get feedback from customers that there's just like every time we meet with them that there's like something new that we have to share with them because we're just cranking out new features and new features. Super excited about this feature and how it's been game changing. We've gotten a lot of super positive feedback. I wanted to just share an invitation today and the challenge to take that next step of integrating and implementing Observe Point within your OneTrust with the OneTrust, TrustArc, Protiviti, Evidon, all those CMP admins. Go and find those admins that manage the consent on your websites and make sure they know about our technology. Make sure they're taking advantage of it and piggybacking off of the scanning that you're already doing in many cases. That's our invitation challenge today. I wanted to, here it is in writing. So share this webinar recording with someone from your legal or privacy team that doesn't know about Observe Point yet. Make sure that they are taking advantage of this. We'll make sure to send out the recording link afterwards so you can share it and they can get access to it. I wanted to give you confidence that you'll be successful and that they'll respond positively. This is after a demo we had with this last week with a recently onboarded customer, their brand new Observe Point customer, and we had an audience with the OneTrust CMP admin. And she said, this is coming at exactly the right time. It is so necessary and will make my life much happier. This is just one example, one snippet of a number of a whole mountain of feedback that we've gotten from customers about how great this is. And the consent management and privacy teams are super thrilled about it. All right, we'll kick it to Q&A. I know a lot of you shared some questions during the chat, so we'll make sure to cover those. Mike may have responded to some of them during the webinar, but if there's any outstanding questions, let's discuss them. And we'll hang out with you guys until the questions are done.
Yeah, Tara, I'm just seeing your question about having a view that shows cookies that are set by tags. Yes, we've been thinking about that a lot lately. You can kind of see that view a little bit to my background there that I was sharing on the one slide, but we're looking at simplifying that and just having a table just similar to like kind of our tag inventory report, our tag summary report, where you can see this a list of tags and then any associated cookies in like the next column. So yeah, if you have any ideas or around that and what you'd like to see, feel free to even draw it on a napkin and take a picture and send it to me, whatever would work, or we can jump on another call. But definitely something that's been on very top of our mind. We've kind of been shooting for the stars or with some of our ideas, and we're like, oh, you know what, we should just come up with a simpler version and get it out the door. So so that's right in line with what we're thinking. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, awesome feedback. Any other questions? Feel free to drop them in the chat.
We also have a quick poll that Ryan is going to put up for us, if you guys wouldn't mind. Just asking if you have any ideas or requests for the next tip jar. And if you have any other ideas, you can't do free-filled answers in these polls. So send me an email. Let me know what you're hoping to learn from in these webinar episodes. We really want to make sure that all of the content is relevant.
Awesome. If you have any last questions, hit us up again. A plug for the customer success team. We love meeting with you guys. We love sharing resources, and there's a ton we have to offer. And also, you should go back and watch any. If you found this valuable and you haven't seen some of the other tip jars, you should go back and watch some of them. We try to make them again very live, product centric, and so we're getting in the app, we're demoing it, we're showing you how to take advantage of these features. So hopefully you guys love it.
Cool. Well, if you think of any questions like later, go ahead and email us. I've put my email address in the chat, and I can direct you to the right Observe Point expert. So Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you in about a month with our next episode.
See everyone.
Thanks, guys.